Great. Next up, we have Gabe Russo, who's going to come talk to us about timber sale and what to expect during a timber sale. Gabe?
Thanks, Kyle. My name's Gabe Russo from North Rupert, Vermont. And the name of my company, Southwind Forestry. We are based in North Rupert and provide forestry services to private landowners within Rutland, Bennington counties in Vermont and Washington County in New York State. I finished at UVM in December 2000 and started the company, finished on a Friday, started the company on a Monday, so been in business around 16 years almost. We provide full service forestry services to landowners, which would include consulting forester services and timber harvesting. What makes our company unique is that we use a cut-to-length harvesting system, which is not a conventional method in Vermont. The cut-to-length method is from Europe. It's a European type of harvesting where the trees are cut, delimbed in the woods, and then carried out on a forder. I have two full-time employees. One is a staff forester, would be Nathan, and the other employee runs one of the machines. I personally run the harvester. I am a licensed forester in the state, and one other key element to our company is that we are FSC chain of custody certified. And what that would mean is that we are under certain guidelines and can be third-party audited to make sure that our cutting and our practices are up to a much higher standard than most other contractors in the state. It does give us some leverage in the market to sell wood because there is a certain amount of demand for this FSC product. And if you look in any newspaper, magazine, even your McDonald's coffee cup nowadays, you're going to see the FSC check mark. So we're pretty proud of that.
It stands for what?
Forest Stewardship Council. It's a third-party auditing program. That's a picture of the harvester in action in Mount Holly last year. An active timber sale cutting spruce fir. You can notice the machine is not tracked. It's on rubber tires. That's a harvesting head which actually cuts the tree, delimbs it, and then cuts it into products. That's a picture of the forder. So as you can see, the products are cut to length and then driven out, not skidded, which helps reduce the impact on the woodlot. So I would like to talk to you about timber sales. It's something we do just about every day of the week. Forestry is something I love, and it's something that I live, and it's part of my life. The recipes for a successful sale. There are a number of elements that will make the sale successful. The key ingredients, number one, you have to have a willing seller. You need a landowner that is willing to sell wood or interested in selling their products. Number two, as Steve stated, use a forester. In this case, I called it an agent. The forester will act in your best interest. And as you can see with the diagram, will work between the landowner and the logger. I have the arrows in there because it is going to be a relationship that everyone has to work through. And then lastly, within the sale, you're going to need a willing buyer. For this example, we're going to use a logger. You also could have maybe a sawmill in that position as the purchaser, the buyer. There are a couple types of timber sales. And what this will allude to is the way the wood is sold. I really don't want to go into it in too much depth, but I will quickly go over the two types of sales we see in the Northeast. The first one is lump sum. And in a lump sum sale, the timber will be paid for in full based on the marked volume. You know, the pros with that type of sale is you know up front what you're going to get for the wood, regardless of how the wood is cut, how it opens up, what the market conditions end up being during the sale. It is a guaranteed value paid directly to the landowner. The cons are what, you know, why wouldn't all people sell lump sum? Well, the cons to that is that you lose control over who's going to cut the sale. Once it is put out to bid and paid in full, the purchaser can hire whomever they feel comfortable to cut it. So the landowner may lose control over who cuts it. Also, if it is very valuable wood, we've seen that you actually can lose money by selling valuable wood in a lump sum sale. The next type of sale is the mill tally, a very common sale in Vermont. This is where the timber is paid for essentially on a weekly or bi-weekly basis based on the delivered volume. So the wood is cut, delivered to the sawmill, scaled, and then paid for a week or two later. Pay as you go is the typical term of that type of sale. The pros here is with a mill tally, you are paid for every single stick of wood that is cut and utilized. You also can keep control over valuable wood, selling it on the landing, even selling one log at a time if it is that valuable. So the cons to it is that, yeah, you get the pay schedule is bi-weekly. You're not going to realize the value of the wood until it is all cut and paid for by the end of the sale. So as we talk about a timber sale, I'm going to go over the mechanics of the sale as far as what you should see from your forester. As you approach the sale and engage an agent or a forester, and the landowner is ready, the forester has to go through a similar checklist to this. First thing they need to determine, is there a clear title of ownership? Does the person that contacted you actually own the property? How do we determine that? We go to the town office, we do a title search. The landowner may provide copies of the deeds. But also, more importantly, we're looking also for easements. An example of that would be, does someone else hold the right to cut the timber rights? Are there any easements on the property that would affect the sale? Like Vermont Land Trust, great example. They own the right on some properties to develop, but they also have in their easement, they need to be notified of any timber that is to be cut. The sale needs to be managed by a forester, and there needs to be a plan on file with the Vermont Land Trust. After determining ownership, that it's free and clear of any easements, or if there are, meeting them or satisfying them, you would look to the landowner to see if they have a forest management plan. You know, honestly, all the sales we cut, not every sale has a plan in writing. It still does not mean that you can't come up with a management plan, or in this instance, a prescription to cut that stand. from the plan, you are going to look to see if the woodlot is broken up into stands or management units. Each of these management units will have a silvicultural prescription. And what that silvicultural prescription will detail is how that stand will be cut. So that is what's telling us how the stand is going to be managed. After those two are established, we go out and we do a property boundary recon and marking, meaning we go out into the woods, find the boundary line, and make sure it's clearly painted or flagged, making sure that the sale stays on your landowner. Very important. After the boundary line is placed and painted, we go into timber marking. So we identify from the plan which stand we're going to cut. We have our prescription, how we're going to cut it. Now we take a paint gun and we actually paint the trees that are going to be harvested. And then, the logger, we'll get to it, but the logger will know to only cut the trees with paint. And the trees will have paint at 4.5 feet, and then they'll have paint on the stump. So when the tree is severed and taken to the landing, transported to the mill, the stump still has the paint mark. So that's how we keep track of, hey, this stump has paint. So all trees with paint are cut, and then we keep track of, is the logger cutting the correct trees. After the sale is marked, and this next step is according to the landowner, we can either tally the sale or not tally it. And what tally means is keeping a running volume or running tally of how much timber we mark per day, and then at the end of the marking. And we can give you an estimate of what will be cut. Yeah.
Dave, where is the quality of the timber judged in this? You talk about volumes, but not the quality of it. That is, whether it's going to be used for veneer, whether it's going to be used for, there's various pricing on that system. Who plays the role in that?
Well, the one gamble you're going to face as a landowner is you're not going to know the quality until the tree is cut. What determines veneer? First off is diameter. Second is zero face, which would mean no defects. And then third would be internal defect. So stating that, going into a sale thinking you have veneer, you could be setting yourself up for disappointment. And you will not know until the tree is severed and brought to the landing. But certainly the first two can be satisfied by the forester. Is it big enough for the veneer class? Is it clean enough? Is it free of visible defects on all four sides? Then you have a hunch with experience. Look at soils, look at previous harvests, look at the species you're cutting. You can kind of get a feel, but you still will not know. It is a gamble. It is a gamble. That's a good question, because veneer can be much more valuable than just a regular solid. Yep.
I was wondering if there's a way you can come up with some sort of range of value of what a harvester of one of these would come up with, value in terms of dollars. Is there a monetary value range that you could?
Well, I used to know a forester who'd tell you 15 grand every sale.
Is that what they all say?
Yeah.
Same answer.
Is there? No, there's no way. I mean, certainly as you mark the timber, you will get a sense of what is it going to be based on. Once again, the size. How big is that stand? Are we talking 5 acres? Or are we talking 100 acres? Species. 100 acres of white pine compared to 100 acres of sugar maple. There's a big difference in value. Those are the things that your forester will talk to you about when you make the plan. They will give you an estimate per acre of what your land is worth.
Oh,
So that will be in your plan. You will have a rough idea of the total value of your woodlot and the total stand value. From our prescription, we will say we will cut 30% of this stand. You should realize from that total value, 30% of that stand in real dollars. And it will be an estimate, of course. But yeah, those numbers will come up out of your plan. Any good forester should be able to do that.
And is there insurance? I mean, is somebody going to talk about insurance for our woodlots? Or is there such a beast as insuring our property for, no?
Insuring the trees.
Yeah, I don't know, is there such, everybody wants to insure everything.
I'm sure you can buy insurance. I'm sure. I personally have never heard of it.
Oh, okay.
Down south, maybe. Maybe on company land, stuff like that. After the sale is painted or marked, the forester will show the sale to a reputable contractor or logger. Typically, any forester will have a handful of selected loggers that he works with. People he can trust, people he knows can do a good job, people that, you know, he knows that are going to go in and perform. Once a contractor is selected, we draw up a contract. The contract outlines the expectations of the landowner and the logger. Examples of that: payment. How will we be paid? When will we be paid? Landowner needs to know that. Contract should specify that very clearly. There should be no question. Insurance, not so much insurance or insuring the trees, but the logger needs insurance. You need to make sure the contractor has liability. If he has employees, he needs to have workers' comp. The trucker he uses needs insurance. He needs a commercial package or commercial insurance package on his pickup. You need to make sure as a landowner that you have and request a certificate of insurance from the contractor.
Can you add your name to that? Have them add you as an insured on this
Yes,
policy?
any reputable logger will call their insurance company and have it emailed to you that day. Have you additionally named on their policy. And it will clearly state the limits of all their policies and what they are covered for. When you are dealing with contracts, foresters are not lawyers. Your forester will draw up the contract if you are not comfortable. Disclaimer, seek counsel. Certainly seek out counsel. Have them look at it and see if you are covered. The problem with wood products, they are not paid for until they reach the mill. If that's your wood on somebody's truck cut by someone else, goes to the mill and gets paid for and something happens, you need to make sure that you're covered just in case. You can even place clauses in the contract to hold the landowner harmless. But once again, I know nothing about writing contracts. We use them as a formality. Essentially, we use them to outline expectations.
Is it your policy to contact contiguous landowners when you're going to do a job?
No, it's not.
There have been many disputes about boundaries and overcutting and
Yeah, part of your, as you own property, you own what they call a bundle of rights. It looks like a basket and you place your rights in that bundle. One of those rights that you have as a landowner is protecting your boundary. So that's why we're out marking it. If there is a questionable boundary, certainly after our title search, after our tax map and surveying search, if there is a questionable boundary, yes, you contact the landowner. certainly.
Okay,
If-
what about right of egress? When you have to cross other people's property to get to the cut.
That's always a great one. Yep. Yep. And so on is saying someone has right of way through you to cut timber on their property, which may be landlocked. That's an example. So they own property behind you, they have access through you. How do you manage that? Well, it depends on what the deed says as far as the right of way. Do they own the right of way or just the right to use it? Do they have the ability to land wood on you? Can you work with them? Certainly, if you have someone come to you and wants to use your property or access through your property, I wish I had Steve slide, call your forester. They can manage and handle that. Sometimes a load of firewood is brokered into it, or even some money if that's the case. That's usually how we handle it. We do enter into written agreements with landowners if they choose. A lot of times it's just a handshake deal. Hey, we need to land on your property. Most of the time it's pretty easy to do so. But sometimes no, it can be trouble.
My understanding, and it might be wrong, is that if there's a landlocked property, the state can force right of egress when there's no right of ways to it, which is a temporary, sort of a temporary right of way.
Yeah, Vermont is a special state in that you cannot be landlocked for removal and moving of timber. And it's one of the only, at least the states we work in, it's one of the only states to do so. So if you have a landlocked parcel with no clear title or right of way to, you can petition the select board in that specific town, and they will choose the easiest route out. Typically, there is some type of skid road or logging road to that property. But that is true. In Vermont, you cannot be landlocked for cutting timber. And we've seen it. We've seen properties where sawmills purchased them. They were landlocked, essentially worthless only for timber, because that's the only way you could get in. They cut the timber, sold the property to these landowners on expecting, they had no idea that they couldn't get to their property. So, and then we went in and cruised them, and there's no wood left. So they're essentially worthless. So be careful, be careful. Same thing, if you're gonna buy property, seek counsel. Seek somebody in Vermont that's savvy to all this, these land transactions. Other things, the contract will specify the type of work you should expect. You know, what is good work? What is good logging? What is good forestry? In the outlines of these expectations, the roads need to be in good shape. Logging, it will be detailed in the contract, logging cannot take place during wet weather. That's when most damage is done due to rutting or runoff. The AMPs need to be in place. AMP are acceptable management practices put in place by the state of Vermont, I think back in the 80s. The federal government placed the Clean Water Act under the state's supervision. So then the states put in place these acceptable practices to control runoff, in essence, to control and manage clean water for the state. So AMPs managed by the state need to be in place, especially legislated by current use, correct? They are mandatory on all current use properties. So no rutting, no discharge, which would mean silt in the brooks, no mud in the brooks, no operation within buffer zones of these bodies of water. Water diversions need to be in place, water buffers. Nowadays, portable bridges are a big big thing. Keep our state's waters clean, mandated by the feds, overseen by the state of Vermont. Those will be outlined in the contract that they are under. They are the responsibility of the logger. And here's where you need to be careful, because you as a landowner are liable for the AMPs in the state of Vermont. Not the logger, not the logger, the landowner.
What is the letters you, NP?
Acceptable management practices, AMP.
That's the, I'm hearing, okay.
Can't you make it contractual so that it does fall on the logger? Could you put that in the contract?
I'm sure you can put anything in the contract. You can negotiate it, certainly with the forester, as part of the expectations when they sign, yes. Logger will implement AMPs on property. Yep.
And you can negotiate that they fix any road damage that they make
Yes,
and all that
yeah.
stuff.
Your expectations need to be right up front. Hey, this road is in great shape. It's gonna, before the sale, it's gonna be in great shape after. Hey, this field where they're landing is clean and free of any debris before the sale. It's gonna be the same way after. How would you ensure that? A lot of times a logger will put forester in charge, or the agent will make the logger place a deposit on the sale. Say $1,000. And what you can do with that money, if they fail to perform, you can use that, hold that money, and then try to clean the sale up with that. During an active sale, your forester should come out unannounced and inspect. Meaning, don't tell the loggers, hey, I'm going to be here every Friday at 2. And this is just my opinion. Show up anytime, 4 in the morning, 8 at night, 5. Get a look and see what's going on. What's in the log pile? How do the roads look? How's the residual stand? Are they, here we have our AMPs, are they in compliance? Is there mud running into the brook? You know, that's a red flag. When I talked about marking the trees, we look for stump spots. Are they cutting the proper trees? Make sure we keep track of the trees that were painted are being cut. Residual stand damage, it alludes to what is left standing. So once the tree is cut and removed, the only thing the landowner has left at that point is the tree next to it. That tree next to it is your future timber sale. There should be no damage or very little damage to the residual stand. It will help not only the stand recovers quicker, but it'll help grow better timber for the future. So you need to keep track, the forester will keep track of, it's pretty much, I guess it's how well the logger is doing. Is he, you know, I attribute good logging to low residual stand damage. Good loggers put trees in the right spot. They put roads in the right spot. They skid trees or they haul trees the correct way. They don't work when it's wet. So the residual damage is very low. That's what you're looking for. Another key is utilization of what they are cutting. Each market has a specific product that they look for. As a logger, you always look to sell to the highest market. And you push that specific dimension, say it's 10-inch minimum diameter. Once you attain that, you sell to the next highest market, the next product, and down and down and down until the last product is the lowest value product on the property. The problem with utilization is, one, are they selling it to the smallest diameter that the highest market allows, or are they putting it into the next market down? You need to keep track of where the wood is sold and where it is going. The forester in charge needs to keep close track of that. Yeah.
What would be the reason logger would put it in a lower market bracket or market rate? Is there an incentive for him not to get it the highest price?
No, there's not.
Even money itself isn't an incentive to get it the highest price, or is it?
That's a good point, and I'll speak in two different ways on that. One, he may not know. That's why we're here. Hey, whomever, Jim, that you really should be pushing that tree over into this pile. They're paying more money. They'd be like, oh, I didn't know that, or show me, or he'll show you, oh, here's why I can't. And two, with a mill tally type of sale, which I went over earlier, there is an incentive, yes, built in for the logger to sell to the next highest market. The logger is paid more as the landowner as you go up in increases in value. So yes, there is an incentive built in, but it does happen. It does happen. Not a
So
lot,
it's your responsibility as the forester to know the markets.
for sure. Yep. And the logger, any good logger will. They'll know them, back and forth. But you just want to keep track of it and talk with the logger about it and make sure you're selling the wood properly. Is the landowner happy with the way aesthetically that it looks in the woods? The slash, the tree, the tops of the trees. A lot of times people like that chopped down so it kind of has this neat appearance. Some people like the tops up to prevent the deer from getting in and browsing. So once again, that would be a case where you work that out in your contract with the slash. How do you want the woodlot to appear? As the sale goes on, you want to try somehow to track the number of loads leaving. They did try to push this through the legislature this year with trip tickets. We use trip tickets every day of the week. It's not mandated or regulated by the state. It's just the only way we're accountable. I spend my entire day in the woods. I come out. I see the landowner, hey, how many loads did I get today? I don't know. There's nothing worse looking at landowners that I have no idea how many loads we cut today or hauled out. So I go over, we have a mailbox on site, open the mailbox, our trucking slips are in there. We can then sit down and talk. Well, this load went to the pulp mill, this load went to the sawmill, this load went for firewood. They're numbered chronologically and they're dated. There's a destination type of product, who trucked it, who cut it. There's 4 copies, landowner gets one, trucker and the logger get one as well. Not all loggers will do that. Good foresters can keep pretty good tabs on it. Pretty good. But the only way to ensure it is every time a load leaves, you fill out a trip ticket. Once it hits the mill and it's scaled, yes, you will get a ticket from the mill 1 to 2 weeks later. So then you can reconcile your trucking slip with the mill slip. So you know that one went in this date, here's a number, the date and the number should be on the mill tally slip. During an active sale, your forester will help bridge the gap between the logger and the landowner with the payments. Payments not only go to the landowner, but the forester will get the slips to keep track of the volumes. Some foresters even handle the payments. So make sure that is ironed out prior to the start of the sale. You don't want to just have payments show up not knowing what does this mean? I don't even know what this means. So all that should be listed in your mill tally slips and with a copy of your trucking slip. And then during the sale, certainly there should be discussion between the landowner, forester, and the logger. Any questions arise, certainly the landowner should be able to talk to the forester and then in essence talk to the logger. The logger should provide as much information as they can to the forester and then same as the forester back. They should be working together to get the sale cut properly and in a timely fashion. But it's key to have that discussion because I say no news in forestry business or in the logging business is bad news. It's not good news. So if you don't know, ask. Because there's wood still being cut and it's still being trucked, and you need to know where it's going and what's going on. At the end of the sale, as a forester, you should walk around, make sure all the trees that were painted were cut. Not only do the AMPs have to be implemented during the sale, an active sale, at the end they need to be in place before the logger leaves. And your examples here would be water bars, clean the landing, smoothing the roads. Was there any stream crossings they need to be stabilized? Need to check. The logger is going to leave and there's still going to be wood out. The forester in charge needs to check, is all the delivered wood paid for? So keeping a handle, once again, the sale is done. But like I said, you're going to be paid a week, 2 weeks, even 3 weeks later. Everyone leaves and you're wondering, hey, am I going to get paid? Stay in contact with the forester, making sure you know when you get paid. And then, are you happy with the results? As a landowner, you should expect change if you are going to partake in a timber sale. It is going to look a lot different. It may even be shocking, depending on what type of sale you're going to have. Steve made a good point. Go and look at similar sales that are prescribed on your property. See if it's something that you really want to do. Some sales are less invasive than others, meaning some sales, single tree, thinning, crown thinnings, very low impact. Some sales, such as patch cuts, clear cuts, it's going to be a changing event for that stand of timber. Can you deal with that? I love it. Good forestry to me looks good, whether it's a patch cut or a single tree selection, but just know as a landowner it's going to look a lot different. That's a closed out landing taken last week. So like, you know, my prior statement, it was a field which was right next to it. Landowner specified in the contract, landing will be cleaned up upon closeout. That's bulldozed, all the product is delivered. There's no landing debris, chunks, even bark really, and it's seeded to grow back into a field.
Does having that done cut into the money you would get from the sale of it? Oh no? Okay.
Doesn't. Not always, no. Sometimes it does. That is going to be negotiated in the contract. Once again, it's going to depend. How much are you cutting? How big is the sale? What type of wood? It does come down to the value of the timber sale. Yeah. Typically, no, the logger will do this if it's specified in the contract. These are just some examples of timber sales that we've put on over the last year. This would be a thinning. We're removing competing trees to grow the trees that are obviously left behind. When you talk residual damage, you can look into the tops. You don't see broken branches. You don't see any of the boles or the base of the trees scarred up, which would be a residual damage to the tree. So that, to me, is a good job as far as quality of wood.
Are you felling the tree with a guy on the ground with a chainsaw, or is your machine felling it and controlling its fall?
On this sale was a chainsaw. As far as tops and slash, this would be that would be under 4 feet for an example. So if you look at the slash there, it's chopped down, you know, down to there. This top's sticking up a little bit, but I don't know. That's a real clean job to me. This is an example of a red pine pole harvest that we actually cut last winter. And I guess my point here is there's many different types of products that people have and sell. These are red pine trees. They're marked, that's a 57 footer, purchased by a pole company out of Connecticut. They will come up, mark the poles, and then you cut them to length, and then we truck them down to Connecticut. And as far as value, that pole right there is worth $110. Gross.
At the mill,
Gross,
or to the owner?
yeah. No, I wish. I wish everybody owned red pine. Oop. This is a sugar maple veneer sale. So here's an example of a mill tally sale with very valuable sugar maple veneer. So what do we look for? Form, very clean, not many defects. Size, very big. And then they are severed. We know the heart size is small. With the mill tally sale of veneer, in this instance, we actually lined them up in 2 rows. We invited buyers to come in, and they actually scaled and bid on the wood on the landing. That roll of wood right there was valued at over $20,000. So the pros there is we kept control over the sale, even to the extent that we sold it on our landing in front of our own eyes. It didn't get shipped somewhere and purchased off the site. We also ensured that more than one person looked at it to bid on it. And if we didn't approve their bid, obviously the lower bidders we did not choose. So it's a good way to sell high-end wood, certainly if you got the market. That's a picture of an uneven aged single tree selection in, where is that, Danby?
Yeah.
Danby. Wish we had a picture of clear. And then any questions? I thought that was fitting for this year in Vermont, considering the amount of regulations they're putting on us. We like cutting trees, and I like when people buy paper. So. You know, a timber sale it may just be a one-time event during your ownership. I say all the time, 9 out of 10 stories when it comes to logging, typically they're bad, and it typically deals with timber and being either stole, cut improperly, not utilized, or just the landowner not having a good feeling. So in saying that, make sure you do your homework. Contact your local county forester, find a reputable forester, and certainly find a reputable logger to do the work. Stay in contact with them during the sale. If you have questions, ask them. Make sure you have a plan in place. Make sure that the wood is painted. Make sure there's a way that you can track the wood. Make sure that you know where it's going. Just so that you don't sit up laying awake at night wondering, am I really getting the value out of this wood, or am I getting taken to the cleaners? You want it to be a success story.
So the forester shows up sporadically during the process. What about the landowner? Should he be there the whole time? Checking these trucks going in and out?
Sure, I have landowners put up game cameras. Or they hire the retired neighbor who sits on his porch and counts the loads as they go by. Certainly do your due diligence. I mean, if you have a good feeling that you can trust people, verify it. Do I recommend? I mean, you can do whatever you want as a landowner. Yeah, go every day, stop and say hi to them. I mean, you do want it to be a positive experience.
Bring donuts.
Sure. What logger doesn't like a donut?
Right.
Especially about 10 o'clock with a cup of coffee. Yeah. But certainly if you have a question, or if you're wondering, the easiest way is the load counting system. because you don't want to lay awake, and be, oh, I missed the load, I got to go down, and you sit there all day watching trucks go back and forth. If you're doing that, there's some sense that you don't trust what's going on. So to me, that's a red flag that should have been caught way before the sales even started. You need to trust who you're working with. I work with loggers and contractors. You know, they keep track of their own sale. I don't question, but it's kind of that, you know.
Well, like you said, it's once in a lifetime, so you honestly don't have experience with them,
Yeah,
you
that's
don't know
right.
each other, so.
That's right. Jim White's the old county forester, and he used to tell me, he said, you know, people, they go to buy a car, and they'll spend 6 months, and they'll go to every dealership, and they'll try every single car they see in the lot. But he said, you know, a logger could show up at their door and knock, and he said they'll let that guy cut their wood the next day. And he just never understood that. You're right. With such a, you know, maybe it is that one-time thing for you as a landowner. Do your homework and make it a positive experience. You don't want to go and have, because it does happen. It does happen.
Gabe, I got a few questions. You say the chain of custody, going back to the Ford Stewardship Council,
Yeah.
in one of your early slides. There's this whole other certification processes going on by buyers called Certified Forestry Initiative. That is by big users of timber products who are saying, yes, we want to pay attention to chain of custody, and we only want to certify to our customers of end products, whether they're paper or whatever, that we're purchasing timber that has chain of custody under this Certified Forestry Initiative. Do you have any perspective on that? Okay.
I was approached by the paper mill that I delivered to, which is International Paper. They hand-selected a few contractors, people they knew that probably could toe the line, and said, we will pay to have you certified if you bring clients into the working group, as they call it. What that allows International Paper to do is we send in a pure certified product. It goes to the mill and it is mixed. They sell an FSC mixed product. They need a certain percent of their paper FSC certified. So my experience with FSC is only through International Paper. I certainly understand there's many others. And what drives International Paper? The market. People want certified wood. People nowadays, with their smartphones, they go to buy a product, they Google it, or they look it up. McDonald's went to International Paper and they said, we need that symbol on our coffee cup. And that's why it's there. And they said, either you supply that product or somebody else will. So that's my experience.
Thanks. I have two other questions that are related to your presentation. One is the term or the phrase sustainable forestry practices. That means taking a large parcel of land, dividing it into sectors,
Yeah.
and determining if you can use those sectors over a sequence of harvests, so that by the time you're finished, you can come back to the first one and do it again.
That is sustainable.
Now, that may be outside of my lifetime, but that's the succession plan.
Correct.
So what's the minimum size of property? I know it'll be determined by the quality of wood and timber, standing timber that's on there. But if you have a good piece of timber that hasn't been forested in 80 years, what sort of size? And this is mixed hardwoods mostly.
You know, we've
We talking about 25 acres?
yeah, I mean, we've moved this equipment on lots as small as 5 to 7 acres,
Uh-huh.
and as big as 2,000.
Yeah.
So it depends on what is there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the final question I have is firewood versus timber.
Mm.
Sale prices for firewood. Is that part of the contract?
It is
Yeah.
per cord.
Per cord.
Wood, yeah, that's a great question. I didn't cover. Saw
Yep.
logs are paid by the 1,000. They're
Right.
scaled at the mill by the 1,000 board feet, or international quarter-inch scale. Firewood and pulp, or firewood's paid for by the cord, and then pulp's paid for by the ton. And that is specified in your timber sale contract. The value per thousand for saw logs, or dollar per thousand for saw logs, dollar per cord for firewood, and dollar per ton for pulp. When these products pay, logs will pay dollar per thousand. One load truck and pup of saw logs, say 6,500 feet, 6,000 board feet of saw logs. You know, I shipped one in the other day. It was 6,500 feet. It paid $3,400 before trucking. It was good hardwood. Trucking was 400. It was, you know, whatever, 2,900 and something bucks. Pulp's paid for by the ton. A truck and pup of pulpwood averages around 32 to 34 tons, and you're going to be surprised. Pine pulp pays very, very little money. I mean, it almost does not pay for us to cut it after trucking. Landowner can realize maybe $1 per ton on pine pulp. It just does not pay any. So you might get 30-something bucks a load for your pine pulp. I figure I pay 50-50 on pine pulp after trucking, and after my costs, I make 30, so the landowner makes 30. So yeah, Kyle.
Gabe, the value in that though is the work done, correct?
Certainly pine pulp, you're hopefully taking out unacceptable growing stock and growing something better. Correct. Yeah, the value is the investment of what is left over or left on the property.